All right. So, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. Good morning. This is my mentor, Mr. Stewart. He's going to talk about standard 6, 7, and 8.
Okay. So when we look at the standards for 6, 7, and 8 according to her lesson plan, I think some of the key takeaways are, of always, as far as the planning piece, which is standard 7, because of the group of students that we're working with, we know that planning should consist of multiple days. So,
Okay.
so normally for our special education, special needs students, our specialized program students, we always like to make sure that our lessons would cover multiple days. So not just one day of planning, but the lesson should be at least minimum of 2 days.
Okay.
And within those days, it also should leave time for reteaching. So sometimes within those lessons, you may have to reteach, and also even after you have reassessed, you may have to go back and do post-planning, in which you may have to go back and reutilize some more tools, and then reteach, and then reassess again. So for Standard 7, your planning part was good. I think for Standard 6, which is the assessment piece, we always want to make sure that we put in things that would best implement for our students with special needs. So if we need like sentence starters, if we need like word banks, if it's, or for a math class in particular, if we need a calculator or we need a multiplication factor sheet, we always want to make sure that we have those supplementary aids.
But this was social studies, so we try to chunk it down some of the words.
And even with your social studies class, you want to make sure that even for like assessments that you don't have a lot of reading for the kids. Okay. So like if, for example, when you give them questions, just make sure maybe it's like a one answer open-ended question where they can kind of expound on it, or it could just be a simple one-word question, one answer question, which is always good, especially for, as I say, especially for our students when it comes to the assessment piece. And then the last thing for Standard 8, which I think is good, your instructional strategies, just make sure that you do your guided practice, that you do give time for some individualized instruction with some of your kids that are not necessarily picking up on the material. Also make sure that that we're scaffolding, that we're building on previous information from previous lessons that you've taught before, that will help maybe bring into some of that prior knowledge, especially with economics. And another good thing is to always make sure you review vocabulary with them, just to make sure that they're building up their word bank, and making sure that they're able to utilize some of those words and understand what the meanings and definitions
Yeah, that's
of
what we did, like, what goods means and what are the,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And always always reinforce and always use those strategies. But for the most part, the guided practice always works well with our guys. Direct instruction sometimes works, but the guided practice really works well with our guys, because that way you're leading them as they're learning. So you take step by step with them. But overall, looking at the lesson, like I say, the planning was good. The instructional strategies were good, and then also for assessments, just make sure that you leave yourself some flexibility with assessments, because some guys may have to, do assessments orally where they may not necessarily have the, writing skills or whatever. So always make sure you keep into, take into consideration your different types of learning styles and different ways of showing evidence of learning and mastery. But overall, the lesson planning was well, and we look forward to next week's lesson. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank you,
right.
Mr.